It has been a while since I did a 10 tips video, and this is probably my most popular series, save for the reworking models one, so here you go, enjoy. A good few of these tips will be revolving around new features to do with the recent Fool's Gold update, but I mean that's only natural. Like, if you haven't checked out the new stuff yet, then you sincerely should. It's an awesome update, have fun. Anyway, let's get on with the tips. Tip number 1, so new shoulder decoration or custom armor via the new backtails that we can put on. So out of all the Fool's Gold stuff that we've gotten, these new backtails are probably the feature with the most potential. Now I could go on and on and on about what you can do with this. You know, everything from coloring ridge tails as plate to make custom armor to hair tails clipped into the face for extra beards. But the example that I would give here is a simple one. That is to pose a winged tail down over a character's shoulder and arm to create an edgy feather cloak. Like, you'll need to know the basic grasp of tail posing to pull this off, but it's way easier now than it ever used to be, you know, when the tails all started down in Narnia. And here is the finished example of how something like that can look. Now, obviously it's not perfect, like it will always look a little bit janky from some perspectives. It's you know, rule of cool, it looks good. Now, as per usual, link to this model as well as example model for all the other tips will be in the description below, so you can find everything you want there. So, tip number 2, cloth underneath shoulder pads. So, the basic cloth was released a few months ago in a Treasure Tuesday, and out of all the extra arm item additions that you can put on a character, nothing really beats this cloth, not even the old metal trick. Basically, you just slap it in an extra hand, you move it underneath a shoulder pad, or really anywhere on a character, you color it, and boom, there you go. You have an extra bit of heraldry for any color. If you have decal kit bashing, you can spice this up even further by putting like some extra symbol on top of it as well. And this here is just one example of how it can look when it's done. I mean, you have a cloth here, you have a cloth here, you have a cloth here, you have a cloth here. Like, this cloth item is so easily posed and like circled underneath the shoulder pad to look like it's part of like the overall heraldry of the armor, that it's just like it's too good not to use. I mean, you can see I've used 2 on this model, I've used 1 on this model, and it looks so clean and it's so easy to do. Tip number 3, and now you know me, we cannot have a 10 tips video without at least one shoulder flare trick. So this time it's a modern one though. I'm not just talking about fancy models here, okay? This time it's wires, okay? Plastic conduit wires using the old leaf shoulder pad. So for a modern or sci-fi model, you can essentially just put these druidic leaf shoulder pads on, clip them into the body, and then color these blank strands here as plastic wires, and it looks like you've kind of got electricity flowing everywhere. Like, this is great especially for robotic arms. If you're one of those edgelords who love like characters with prosthetic metal, you know, Luke Skywalker arms, then this is the trick for you. Have fun. Tip number 4, eyelashes. And no, I am not talking about the typical Heroforge decal into black paint. I mean something more subtle. I actually gave out these eyelashes colors in my actual color guide if you want to have them for different skin colors. But essentially what you do is if you put a basic skin color on top of an eyelash decal, toggle the skin option to remove the glow, and then significantly darken just the high color layer, you will get a color that creates very subtle eyelash darkness without the overwhelming black makeup lines that usually come. Now again, I will use this example model again. If you look very closely at this character's eyes, you will see what I've done here. So even though the skin toggle is on these dusky skin eyelashes, you will see even though the skin color is toggled, it can still blend in very well with the rest of the skin, and the high layer is so dark, as you can see if I put it down on his whole face, that essentially it just looks like there's eyelashes, but it doesn't look as overwhelming as if I did this, right? Like, because then obviously it looks like makeup, but now it's subtle enough to look like there's eyelashes there without making it look crazy, you know? Tip number 5, this one is real simple, double bases, okay? It's a new update, so basically all you do is you go into stage, you go into base, and down here at the bottom where it says base size auto, you click 1 by 2, and even if you have a single model, so these bases used to only be available to characters that were sitting on mounts, like horses, but now you can enable them, like regardless if you have a 1 character or 2 characters, but really the main use for this is of course double model interactions, when you're putting together 2 models on 1 base and you have them do something together. Now believe me, as someone who used to do a lot of stories with 2 different models, like, it used to be very, very painful trying to like figure out how to have the space on just 1 base to have these models interact with each other in a way that looked organic and realistic when they still have to be so squished together. So yes, truly great update, very easy to do, whether it's 1 model or 2 models, have fun, bigger bases. Tip number 6. So, some of the new body and face options given to us by the Fool's Gold update look incredible with glows, like whether we're talking about the straight runic lines on the Foreclaimer face or the crevices in the Golem face. You can simply enable glow and you put a bright color on the lowest glow layer and all of these little lines on these faces will shine. It looks great. So the most obvious example, of course, is the Golem here. And you can see that I haven't done it everywhere. I mean, there's no glow in the lines here, but in these some areas you can see I've definitely slapped this on, right? Like the glow sticking between the rocks here and in the horns, as well as in these little occasional decals that are dotted across the body. I mean, there's glows here and there. Not everywhere, but like just enough to make it clear that this is like an inherently magical Golem. And it adds a very nice subtle effect, and I would definitely recommend it. Again, link to this model is below. Tip number 7. As is customary, we need at least one double model stacking trick for this tip video. So stacking different faces in Heroforge on top of each other is generally quite a hard and advanced thing to do, and honestly I don't really recommend it for beginners because of how janky it can be, but here we have a real simple one. One where it really doesn't matter if you mess up or if you like make them a little bit desynced, it won't matter because the messiness is part of it here. If you want more detailed or more scary looking zombies or undead, you should use this trick, which is to stack the skeleton face on top of another zombie face. Now these two on top of each other will bring a lot of really cool uncanny detail to a face, regardless if you color it like bone or like skin, just trust me. And here you have the finished result of this zombie with literal teeth sticking out of the face here. Yeah, I mean look, unlike with other face stacking where you need to be really careful that it doesn't end up looking silly, I mean in the case of like my D&D model here, it's very easy to go wrong with this, is what I'm trying to say. Whereas in the case of this rotting zombie ghoul skeleton face, on the flip side, it's very hard to go wrong with this. Like how do you mess this up? Because even if I tilt the head just slightly backwards, like it won't really change the message of the face. Like it's kind of okay no matter what, because it's kind of meant to look messed up, right? Like it just works. And of course, it's not just faces. I mean, you can see that I also have a rib cage sticking out of the torso here, but and yeah, spine sticking out of the back. There's some freaky stuff you can do with ghouls. But anyway, point is stack skeleton face on top of zombie face. It's great. Tip number 8, setting people on fire. So most of you probably know that you can enable these magic-y burning arm attachments on top of other arms, right? And they're great, but if you do this on extra arms, and then yeah, I know another extra arm tip, just bear with me, okay? It's not an item this time. If you clip them inside of the character, all of that flaming clutter that's like ranging across the arm and the elbow will suddenly be clipping through the model's clothes and torso and everything, and then it really looks like you're burning someone alive, and it is great. This here is obviously an old model from my Crusader versus Necromancer cult build, but as you can see, this is really where I put it most to use. So if I pull some of these extra arms out, if I just reset the posing on some of them, you will suddenly start seeing these burning arms just like flying out of his torso. And again, much like with the skeleton face trick, it doesn't really matter if you fail to pose these properly because the messiness is kind of part of it. All I have to do with this is just twist it into the body, and you can kind of see the flames, no matter where they end up, will look kind of okay, because it's just you're just trying to make it look like the character's burning, and flames are unpredictable, you know? Tip number 9, the defeated pose. So like this may seem obvious, but it's a criminally underused tip that I personally adore, which is to simply drag down characters' shoulders a little bit by the clavicles. Slouching them down and forward like this does not only convey poorer posture, it also kind of gives this clear look of dejection or defeat. Or on the flip side, just a person who's relaxing, you know? Like I find that most of the default poses have very tense, pushed up shoulders. So if nothing else, pulling the clavicles downwards will often make characters a little more naturally posed, in my opinion. Again, this is an older model, but it conveys the point very well. Like this is supposed to be an exile, right? Like someone who's like basically been kicked out and they're wandering about and they're tired and they're defeated and whatnot. So the shoulders are very slouched, and you can see in the clavicles, both of them have been pulled down far from what the average is. So if I pull them back to their base positions like this, and so this here is with the arms pulled down, but with the clavicles in their natural like default position. And as you can see, although the pose is effectively the same, you don't really have the same feeling to it with the shoulders as high up as they are now. But if I quickly undo that, Now you see, like, there is a noticeable difference in my mind, and it's a very easy trick to use, so just use it. Tip number 10. Side equipment to enhance or edit or customize armor. Now this is quite a broad tip technically, and all it essentially is using these side equipment slots, and rather than adding sword sheaths or pouches or holsters, you add things that will contribute to the clothing itself. So one really simple example would be like these cloth pieces I've added from the side equipment on the Minotaur, like I demonstrated before, to match up with all the other cloth pieces that I've used clipping arms for. And another example would be these musical instruments used here to add even more layers to this hip armor. I mean, you can see these like sticking out, and they're colored like they're part of the armor, but obviously, I mean, I don't know what this music instrument is called, but you get the point. But obviously it goes without saying that the exact posing of these side equipment things kind of depends on the clothing you've already chosen. I mean, in this case of the gladiator model that I made recently, it's quite self-explanatory that I'm basically just using these for the purpose of like evening the gap between this skirt and the chest piece, because if I remove this side equipment, suddenly this character, there's just this weird line here, like the character's waist is just so much thinner than this gigantic fat skirt. So by having this extra side equipment, it evens out the entire armor of the character. But that's not to say that you're limited to doing this solely with musical instruments or cloths. I mean, you can do it with pretty much anything so long as it fits what you're working with. I mean, there's these axes, or you know, these old but gold, slightly easier to work with axes from the past. I mean, whatever it is that you end up going for, just have fun with it. If you like these tips, then please press like, and if you think they were garbage, you can press dislike too. In any case, please let me know in the comments below if you feel you have any good tips that fit for a future video like this one, and I will consider throwing them into the next one. Now, goodbye until next time. Farewell.